everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Empire Mentality. I'm pumped for you to listen to the conversation that I had with our guest today because it's definitely one that's from a different perspective than the first 2 episodes that we put out there. So I was just locked into everything he was saying. He was putting out some lessons and just some perspectives and experiences that I had never heard before. So it was definitely one that I've listened to back a few times and that you're going to want to listen to back and catch yourself rewinding and wanting to hear stuff again. So he's a guy that I've known indirectly just from playing against him, his teams in high school, and then he became one of my coaches in college. He is the founder of the Training Football High and Tight, and he's my guy, Coach Tom Creguer. We talk about that too, just in college. Some of the guys we went against, sometimes we always said we didn't have the horses. Sometimes that's just how it
Or the
goes.
race was a little too long for those horses.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That makes sense too.
Yeah, you gotta find some way to give yourself an opportunity to be successful.
Yeah. But when so growing up, you still coach football after college, military stuff like that we'll get into. But growing up, when you were in elementary school or middle school, high school, was that what you were thinking, sports, and you wanted to coach someday, or what was your upbringing like? I guess
I think my age kind of puts me in a different classification. Like if I'm your age, if I'm a 20, 30-year-old guy, where when you grow up in sports, there's all kinds of camps, there's all kinds of opportunities. When I was growing up, there wasn't all that 7-on-7, all these camps, all that. It was like you only had a small window to play if you were fortunate to play. And growing up in a rural town, like families didn't allow you to just go play. Like that's farming season, that's harvest season. Yeah. So I mean, if you got to play, there were some really good, strong, athletic guys who didn't play football because that was the time of the year where you harvested the crops, and they wouldn't come out until they were in high school when they had a little more voice in their family.
Yeah.
So when I started, I was very fortunate. In second grade, I was a little chubbier and a little bigger, a little fatter. So I got to play with the fourth graders because that was the first year you could play tackle football. And to me, that was like a release from reality. Like I got to hit somebody and I got to like be angry and in a good way. And so I always played with the angry element because of my childhood upbringing was a little different than those around me. Coming from we had guys that were broken homes, but my home was a little different than that. It was even worse than that, if there is a degree of worse, right? But for me, football was a release. Football was an opportunity. Football was an escape, and that I was addicted to it from day one.
Yeah, that's kind of that's when you can find that. I was talking to someone the other day about this. When you can find that release or that, and we were talking about it earlier today. Just that. When you're having a bad day, even when you can find a release to go work out or something like that, where you can take your aggression out on the weights or on someone else in a legal fashion. Well, so there's a guy at the Combine this year who said they asked him why he loved football, and he was like, it's the only place where I can hit someone as hard as I can and not get arrested for it.
It's a coping mechanism. Yeah. So I would love to listen to his backstory because there's probably some anger and some unresolved issues where he's like, I need to do this or my sanity is going to be in jeopardy.
Yeah. I can't remember who it was, but we'll have to look it up for sure. But then it's coming up with just football, sports, farming, working.
I was not an athlete growing up. That's the part. You and I met at a different stage in my life. And so by the time you and I had met, I had already had, 20 years of solid training, where when I was young, I wasn't athletic. I didn't come from a family of athletes. I was first generation college graduate. Actually, I was first generation, getting close to college graduation, and none of my family played sports other than softball, beer leagues, and my dad was, pretty good softball beer guy. He was tough more than he was good. And then, you look at, you think about your dad, and I remember your dad, being a big power lifter and, bodybuilder type guy, real strong, real athletic, real fit. My dad wasn't that way, but I can have visual images of him dragging an engine block across the machine shed, which
man stuff.
Oh my gosh. Just, we're going to get this done. And all the other words that go along with it, in the process of getting angry that you're dragging this across. But those are very formidable. At the same time, it's also that part where you start taking that information you've seen and realizing that that's not the vision I have exactly for how I want to be. There's good things about it, but there are also bad things. You have to filter it. And so that realization that my father didn't always do it right came to me at a very young age. You know, I can remember 8 years old, like deciding that I was not going to be an alcoholic. I was not going to do drugs. I was not going to drink, you know, all these different things. I was not going to be in the situation. I'm not going to put my children in a situation like this. So at 8, and my wife always jokes about it. She's like, yeah, what else happened at 8? 8 was a defining moment. And I always tell everybody, if you don't know where your bottom is in life, then you're probably, you know, you're going to handle stress differently. But if you know where your bottom is, then everything else, you just remind yourself, this is not that big a deal.
And you were that young when you started noticing these things?
There was a lot of, you know, I tell them about there was outside factors, right? Mm-hmm. Things that cause change. You know, it's ironic because I talk about that in terms of fumbling the ball. Like, things cause change. You get force from the outside that's greater than the force you have on it currently, and it's gone. Well, that was my life was going in a direction where there was a lot of forces. I couldn't walk straight to where I wanted to go. You know, I was dealing with things that an 8-year-old shouldn't deal with, you know, a 6, 5, 4-year-old shouldn't deal with. And nothing I want for my own children. But you have to, because that's what it is. You know, at 5 years old, I choose who I'm going to live with. You know, at 8 years old, I choose I'm going to choose life over death. You know, and that's a deeper thing in today's reality. Is people don't want to talk about these big things, but you know, I chose at 8 years old not to cause harm to someone. You know, my father. I chose at 8 years old not to commit suicide. You know, that those are things that 8-year-olds shouldn't be choosing.
Right.
But the forces around me were so great that I was forced to do it. And as a result, it put me on a different trajectory that I saw the world differently than an 8-year-old should. And consequently, 40 years later, I still see it differently.
That's amazing, because there's people that still don't think that way, and you could figure it out at a young age. I guess maybe it's the force. People aren't forced to think that way. Like I haven't been forced to think that way, but I try to force myself internally rather than having external forces try to figure myself out or something like that. But
well, take it one next step further is when you're a parent, you're a husband and a father. You have to create situations that allow you to come to that realization, but you don't want to do it the same steps you had. Like, you need to make your child and your wife think about why they think what they think. You need to do that, but you don't want to do it in a way that's supportive, right? I look at our kids that we coach and teach today. None of them fail. Like, everybody gets a ribbon. So they never have to go through that hardship of like, well, why do you feel the way you feel? You know, you have anger. Why do you have anger? Is it disappointment or is it anger? What led to that anger? What led to the disappointment? If you took those steps earlier and did these things, I'll give you, for instance, my oldest son at home right now. He was up for they were district baseball finals, and I kind of said to him, I go, he's going to be the pitcher. I go, well, what are you going to do today to get ready? Well, I'm just going to relax. I'm like, is that the best choice? You know, so now I'm giving him opportunity, right, to make a choice. He's only 10. It doesn't really matter. But does it matter? And so then he goes there. They don't perform well. They don't win it. And he's got to handle that disappointment. You know, but if I would have directed him and told him, okay, do this, this, and this, maybe there would have been a different outcome. But would he have learned the lesson that failure taught him? Because now he's going to be like, Dad, next time,
Yeah.
you know, I'm doing this. You know, Dad, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to go out and warm up. I'm going to do this. I'm like, okay. A small example, right? But if he doesn't have that pain and that suffering and that quote unquote humiliation because he didn't win the game for the team that he could have, then maybe it's some kind of incentive for him in the future.
Yeah, it's those little people don't think, yeah, it's just a little thing. It doesn't really matter, but it does, because in the first podcast we did, my brother Matt said, what you do in one thing, or how, I don't remember how he said it, how you handle one situation is how you handle all situations, or what you do in one aspect of your life is how you'll handle everything. So it's kind of going on the same thing. It might seem like a small thing, but it's.
I use the saying that repetition becomes habit, and habit becomes your character, and then character is what you rely on. It's who you are, right? But who knew that one repetition was going to start into a habit and ultimately be who you were? And then the bad part is, okay, now you got character development. How do you go back and recreate it? And there's all kinds of people talking about, recreating habits, 28 days to do this, whatever it is. In my mind, it's always like equal and opposite balance. If it took you this many repetitions to get to that habit, then it's going to take you that many to undo it. but none of us know how many it is really, right?
Yeah.
So you just got to keep going.
Yeah, and usually you're not thinking about, unless you're trying to develop a habit or something, usually it just kind of happens in a bad way usually, right? It's a bad habit that happens. And to break that, it's funny because when you have a good habit, it took so long to build up, and then like waking up early to work for working out or something, and then you stop doing it for 2 days, it's gone. But if you have a bad habit, it's the opposite. Like it takes longer to, it seems like it, well, I guess it's not the opposite. It's just a negative factor because it's a bad habit that you have. But
to break it is tough.
To breaking it's tough, yeah.
Or you can break a good habit real easy.
Right.
You're like, oh, I was really doing this, and all of a sudden you're like, I just stopped.
Yeah.
Why'd I stop? You know. And the other one's like, oh, I can't stop. You know, that's the part it's the power of choice, right? Free will. We were given free will, but do we exercise it in a positive manner? Mm-hmm. Like people think it's so hard to break a bad habit. But yet, like we just talked about, it's so easy to break a good one. I think the power is equal. It's just whether or not you exercise it.
Yeah. So you've developed all these. When did you start developing kind of these theories, I guess, for yourself? You said you started making choices and stuff at year 8, but we're getting deep into this already. We haven't even, we're about 10 minutes in, and but I mean, is that come from just from coaching, noticing and knowing that you have to learn and teach and impart some wisdom on other people and try to mold young minds, or is that?
I never set out trying to make an impact on someone else. I didn't do that. I wasn't as good as Coach Rima was, right? It was a byproduct because as I assessed where I was, and at 8, 9, 10 years old, I was so much different than my peers, like skill-wise, ability-wise, family-wise. And so I just, by assessing around it, I think people nowadays recognize what's around them, but they don't feel like they can do anything about it. They feel powerless. Well, I'm not smart enough to feel powerless. You know, I was like, no, I can figure a way, right? I got to find a way because this is not happening. You know, and that gets back to that part when you get to the bottom, there's power in that because there's only one way up. You know, there's only one way next, and that's up. And so I would start looking at life like, okay, I'll figure it out, right? I'll find a way. And then, you know, you have people along the way who don't even realize they're impacting you, but there's elements of their life that can direct you. And so I had people around me that were very successful and very human. So they were very approachable. And so I would just ask them, what do I need to do? You know, and I think we've all asked coaches that at some point in our lives, right? What do I need to do? But then the power comes from, I'm going to do it.
Right.
Like it's not just, hey, you should lift 4 times a day. You should use the exercise you should do. You know, am I going to do it? Am I going to follow through? And follow through is a choice. You know, you don't have to come from a rich family. You don't have to come from a poor family. You don't have to come from a nice side of town or a bad side of town to have follow through. That's something you can create yourself. You're born with the ability to have follow through. And so I just basically said, if I truly want to change my future, I need to follow through with what these people who are very successful, you know, and successful can be defined by different things, but they had a very desirable life is the way I looked at it. And so what do I need to do that? You know, and they all talked about having an education. Well, heck, when I was in 9th grade, I read at a 3rd grade reading level. So I had to work on that, you know. And then they all talked about be a person of integrity. That was huge to me. Like, I was like, what's integrity? Like saying what you're going to do and doing what you're going to say, you know. And I struggled because I wasn't modeled in my house, in my life. My own father, my own mother, you know, they didn't follow through on that because they got divorced and they did all these things and, you know, all these different things. So that wasn't modeled. So I had to really grapple with that. Like what, you know, how do I become that person if I don't see that modeled, you know? But once again, it's personal choice. So, and then you start going over, and once you start making those choices, it becomes repetition. And before you know it, you don't even realize that you're bettering yourself because all you keep doing is asking, what can I do? What can I do? And then you start doing it. And then you get some sense of accomplishment, which once you start getting the positive feedback, how minuscule it is, it's addicting.
Yeah.
And you just build on it and go.
Yeah. Did you seek people out like that, or were you just naturally, you were kind of stumbled into a situation where you were around Coach Rietma and other people that you desired to be like, or because it's hard to kind of cut off some of your friends maybe that are going down a path that you don't want to. Did you seek those people out, or were you just in a situation where it just kind of happened that way and you said, I got to take advantage of this?
So my high school was unique. My high school experience was unique because I lived like a half hour away from high school. And so I couldn't run home. Didn't have the resources to do that. So I had like literally like 7 families that took care of me, like in town. I called them mom and dad, mom and pa, I had, different. And so they were there and they were great people. They had great hearts. Like those families today, I could call them and say, hey, could I crash on your couch? I'd be like, of course, could you do this? Yeah, obviously. So they were good human beings. And as a result, I saw people that weren't that way. Like there was, those problem staters and problem solvers. Like there's 2 different kind of people, right? You identify that person will help you, that person won't. And I just removed myself from those people that wouldn't, because I didn't like where I was going. If I stayed here in this situation where I am currently, this is what my life was going to be like. I could see it modeled my own father. That's what I would be. And that wasn't going to be. So I had lots of motivation to change. Yeah. And then the byproduct of meeting people like Coach Rietma, I back up. And when I went to college, I wanted to be around people that were going the right direction. I had a great friend that his dad and my dad were really good friends, but his dad was different than my dad. His dad could still be productive, even though they had similar traits. And so when my buddy, his son went to college, I went to the same college he went to, because I was like, I want to be around this guy. Richie's a great guy. So in order to do that, I had to find a way to get to college, because I'm first generation. Nobody could tell me how to do it. So I literally walked into the head football coach at Central Michigan University. I walked into the head coach's office in July. He was the only one in there. Introduced myself, and he was unbelievable. Like I can't tell you how, because my skill set was not approaching people I didn't know. I was very comfortable with people I did know, and I had no problems being who I was in front of them. But a stranger, come on now. He spent 20 minutes with me, sat down, asked where I was from. Like it was very purposeful in what he was trying to. He was data mining, is what I call it nowadays, right? And so I'm looking at it going, why did I feel so comfortable with him? Well, he was asking questions about me. He wanted to know about me. And then he was connecting things, like he would, oh, you're so-and-so, and Jack, like, well, Jack Dillon was your head coach. I'm like, how do you know that? It's like, so he was connecting the dots. I think long before there's experts on this, right? He was doing that, and he spent that kind of time with me. And looking back now, he was the Mid-American Conference's all-time leading, winning as coach. And he's sitting there talking to a guy who's a nobody. I'm not anybody's recruit board, right? I'm a walk-in, not a walk-on.
Yeah.
And that just told me that to me was a step, and that's what good character people are. Like he listened to me, even though it was time. He listened to me, and then he gave me opportunities by, this is what you can do next. And he wanted to connect me with someone else who could help me. And so he sent me to my position coach. And then it was like, okay, so this is really gather information, find a connection, and then help them. I'm like, this is an easily replicated thing. I can do this. And so that's all I started doing. Every time I meet somebody, just learn 3 things about them, and that just started in my freshman year in college. Learn 3 things about them. And then do they know somebody you know? And you start connecting dots. And then you're like, oh, hey, if you ever need anything, let me know.
And you noticed that skill or that skill that you didn't have. And then you started intentionally just seeking people out to just get to know them, learning to talk and communicate with people better that you didn't know yourself. And also just to gather information and connections. And that's something that has been coming up as a theme in my life lately. Is I'll hear someone say something and it'll impact me for like 3 seconds. And then because I won't sit there and think on it and say, why did he say that? And why is he doing that? And then I'll just move on to the next thing. I'll think, oh man, that was an awesome quote I just heard. But then I won't do anything with it. So that's something that I've been trying to do. But you found it's weird. It's funny that, not funny, but it's amazing that you notice that stuff at a young age, and how, I guess just from your upbringing is how that happened. But that's just amazing to me that it's.
Well, I would like to say, I think in retrospect, I think it was selfish, right? It started from a selfish place. Like I wanted to get away from my childhood. I want to get away from that. So then I had to develop a skill, and I didn't have that skill. So it started from a selfish place that I wanted to change. And then it turned into an altruistic, like, this is the way it should be. Like, this is how we have meaningful relationships and friendships. And so then it became like almost an addiction. Like, and my wife gets mad at it now because we'll be in the middle of nowhere and I'll start a conversation up with him. And she's like, within 2 or 3 minutes, you know, somebody he knows. I'm like, but it's because we're all in this together. Like this whole, 2020 year of, COVID-19, whatever you want to say. I mean, it's true. We're all in together. And it started way before us. We didn't have a reason to actually recognize it, And so in college, it started with me because, there was value in good people, and I wanted to be a good person. So if I wasn't going to be, if I'm not as good as another person, I want to learn from them, So then what was selfish turned into like, wow, this is really the most powerful thing I could have as a person, because my degree is irrelevant, my where I came from is irrelevant, but what I can do going forward was very much about the people I surrounded myself with.
And it's funny that people don't think that way, because you even just saying hi to someone walking down the street, I've been intentionally trying to do that just to kind of grow some of my own skills, and they'll look at you like you're crazy.
I was gonna say, and scare them, right? They're like,
yeah, they'll shock that you made eye contact and said hello.
Yeah,
and it's just weird.
That was a big change when I got to Central Michigan. It was like everybody said hi to everybody. It was
really?
Like, I would say 500 highs on the way to class. It was crazy. It was really a unique place. And now I go into different college campuses, and I tell you what, if I can get 5 highs, or how you doing, or like that, or hold a door, it's a shock.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a regional thing, because I have a buddy that lives in New Orleans, and I lived in Indianapolis, and that's where I met him. And he would say hi to people on the street and stuff, and he would just do it naturally, like you were saying. And he said that it's like down south, everyone just says hi to everyone. It's no big deal. And so when he was in India, it was people would look at him like he was crazy, and he didn't understand what the heck was going on. But I don't know, it's just a weird thing to me too.
People are conditioned differently, right?
Yeah.
Like I was in the Marine Corps, and so when I was stationed overseas, you just, habits become who you are. And so I'm saying hi to everybody, and he's like, "You're from the Midwest, aren't you?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Out east, we don't do that."
Yeah.
What do you mean? He goes, "We're more like I'll kick you in the face."
Yeah. What year were you in the Marine Corps and all that then?
So after the year I went to Central, I walked in, they gave me the walk-on date. And so I spent a year. That would have been 89 and 90, and that was Operation Desert Storm. We had Desert Shield, Desert Storm went on in the 90s when we went in Iraq and Kuwait and all that. Well, I finished my freshman year. And so after my conversation with Coach Dramedy that summer, and I thought, oh, I can do this, right? I'm pretty confident. I had been improving, getting faster, stronger. And I get selected to be part of the team because you had to try out. There was like 48 of us that went and ran an 800 and did some broad jump and then did some other stuff. And I was one of the guys. And I quickly learned that I was the worst guy there. Like, I'm looking around going, holy cow, every one of these guys are better than me. So I was literally the last man on the roster in terms of skill. And so it's like, well, that didn't happen the way I thought. So I spent a year just getting my butt kicked. And so I was frustrated, disappointed, but I'd already been to my bottom, right? So it's like, okay, where do I go from here? So I'm like, I need to do something this summer. I don't want to go home. I don't want to go back over and work, Not that I couldn't, but it's like, I need to have change. And so I just said, what is bigger than me? Like, what can I do that is something that would, maybe get a different look at life? And when somebody suggests, let's go in the military. So a couple guys from my dorms.
Just what your buddy just said.
Let's go in the military. Like, what are you going to go into? Well, my one buddy went to the Army, and my other buddy's like, I'm not going to the Army. And I'm like, well, my uncle's a Marine. I really like, well, my other uncle's a Navy. I'm not going to Navy. I get my one uncle is a Marine. He was a chopper, stick commander on a Huey. And I'm like, I really like him. Let's look at the Marine Corps. And then I started learning about the Marine Corps, and I'm like, oh, this is totally like the few, the proud, the elite, the smallest unit in the government. I'm like, I want to do that. And then the guy was like, it's really hard. I go, okay, good. So it was really hard. It was really difficult. And so my buddy Gilbert and I signed up for it. And May 16th, we got done with exams on like May 4th, and May 16th, I shipped out to boot camp. And as the military will do, they told you to be back in time for football. They lied to me. I always joked that the military is like your first girlfriend. She's going to break your heart. So I was supposed to return August 10th, or excuse me, August 3rd, and I returned August 10th. So I missed a week of camp, but it was the best decision. I did what's called an 84-day reservist. So I did my first recruit training the first summer, and then next summer I was supposed to go back and do my School of Infantry, my MOS training. And so I got to football, and we had a great year. I was a scout team guy, and we went and won the MAC championship, and we were going to go to the bowl game out in California. Well, President Bush activated the Marines for the first time since like 1950, and my unit in November got to say we're going to California, but we're going to Camp Pendleton. So when my football team went in December to go to California, I was already there training. So I missed the last month of my classes, and then went and had the best time of my life.
So when you got that call that you had that day he was activating the Marines, were you excited, or were you disappointed that you weren't going to play football? What was your mindset like that? Which was more important to you at that time?
Wow, it's great. Well, since I was a scout team guy,
Yeah.
I think I was okay with the fact that I was going somewhere else, because they weren't, I'm sure that at the time they weren't sure if they're going to take all of us out there. I'm sure I was disappointed too that I didn't get to finish my classes. I do remember I had a really cool class called Vietnam and the American Experience, and it was a panel class, 500 people, and they brought me on the panel. The panel was all professors, and they brought me on the panel the week before I was supposed to leave, because I went in and talked to my professors like, hey, I'm going to be leaving. Yeah. What do I got to do? They're like, all right, your final assignment is you're on panel. And I'm like, geez. So I get put up in front of 500 people that I've never had that audience before. I'm a freshman, right? Still working on how to talk to people that I weren't comfortable with.
Yeah, you just started saying hi to people.
Yeah. So now I get to do this, I remember being at ease. I remember being very calm about the whole situation, very humbled. Like, they're asking me my feelings. I'm nobody. I'm no different than them out there, except that last May I went and took off for a little bit. They could have done the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so the conversation really went around like, is this just? Should we be doing this? And I kept thinking, why is that my decision? Like, I'm not in charge. Like, the commander-in-chief said we're doing this, so I have to trust leadership. So I really remember, I don't think I gave them the answers they wanted, because I think they wanted me to be upset and like, no, heck no, I shouldn't go, because Vietnam was such a tumultuous experience. Like, people followed the leadership and they shouldn't have. And, it was just one of those periods in time where you look back and go, we could have done it so differently and so much better. But we've got that wisdom. And so I trust our leadership. I might not totally respect how they act, but I trust the leadership because that's my responsibility, my charge. So I learned to be a follower of rules, even though I wasn't as a child. I was the one that was breaking them.
Yeah.
But it was when we went out there, I remember thinking, like, I wouldn't want to be any other place.
Really?
Yeah, because it was just so much. There was a purpose. There was a need. There was all these things that you struggle for as a college student. Like, what am I doing today? I've got all these hours in my hand. What do I do with them? I need purpose. I need direction. I need structure. I need, that element of, like, I can make a difference. Long before that was something we used. Like, mm-hmm. I wanted to make a difference. And so that was just, it satisfied that. So then I looked at it and going, okay, how can I, and in the military, there's some pretty amazing human beings. You can learn so much from those people. And I just gravitated towards them. I'll never forget my first time over in Pendleton. There was this instructor. He's like, okay, you're going to have the oak course. It's the obstacle course, they call it. It's the Marine Corps standard. And he's like, and he ran through it, and he's like, he's demonstrating. And he was a platoon commander. He was a first lieutenant, so he didn't have to do this. This was not his, but he wanted to set the example. Mm-hmm. Hence, Doctus Exemplis, which is Latin for set the example. He introduced me to that. And I'm like, and then he goes up, and instead of going up the rope regular, like all jarheads do and all military people do, he grabbed one in one arm and one in the other arm, and he went up all the way up, opposite arm, rotating, going up, and he gets to the top. He's 40 feet up in the air, and he does U-S-C. And I'm just looking down. I'm looking up at him 40 feet. I'm like, that's amazing. I want to do that. And it was just like, so I took from him that I can be so much different than I am body-wise. And so I went and put in my own little workout I started training at lunchtime when people were going. They had 2 hours of block and garrison. They would go back and eat, and I would go get a training in. I would go get a lift in, a run in, and then I'd do it with my regular PT, and then I'd do it afterwards. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I would do 3 days of work, three workouts a day, with all of the vision. I wanted to do that, and then as you know, repetition becomes habit becomes character, and you see byproducts of it. So then at the end of it, I got the course record, and I could do that. I did like 40 of those, you know, and it's like, once you got that, like, it works, the system works.
Yeah.
Then it just reinforces, like, you can do pretty much anything you put your mind to if you just find the steps to take.
Yeah. We were talking about it earlier off camera, but how people think that they're working hard, but they're not really. There's a guy I follow, his name's David Goggins. He's a ex-Navy SEAL, and he says that when people think they're at their limit, they're really only at 40%.
Oh, you think it's that high?
you think it's lower?
Well, it's relative to the person, right?
Right. But that just reinforces that, like,
yeah,
you were working your butt off, and it was.
Oh, you mean
because you saw someone that you wanted to be like. You noticed that you wanted to be like him, that one particular person, and nothing was going to stop you to get there.
There was an example, right? Someone set the example for you, you know, and then it gets back to that choice. Do I truly want to do that? Like when I was recruiting all full time and listening to the kids talk about their aspirations. Like, I want to be D1. I want to go there. I want to go to Bama. I had one kid tell me, I want to go to Alabama. I'm like, so what do you need to do that? And he looked at me like, what do you mean? I go, that's a pretty lofty goal. I don't think Alabama's coming to knock on your door. So what are you going to do to accomplish that goal? And I think when you set it so far out there, you know, there's almost paralysis by analysis. You think, I can't do that. So let's just have realistic goals. You know, they talk about SMART goals, you know, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Apply those. And then go outside of that. You know, that same kid that I think about with Alabama, if you would have just said, I want to go to CMU and play there, that'd have been lofty enough, but you could have went to Central because you live next to it. You could see what those kids are doing, and you could have done those things. And then maybe you would have. But if you said your goal to be Alabama, but you never go to Alabama and see what they're doing or what it takes, then you're not really setting an obtainable goal.
Yeah.
You know, like if you want to have a, you know, some kind of thing that you experience in life, then you have to be able to see the steps in order to replicate them. Mm-hmm. You know, so be careful. I was told people, you know, strive for perfection, right? Set your goals out there pretty darn good, but you can't set them far enough that you can't see the path, because then you'll just stop. You'll just quit, like most people do.
Yeah.
You know,
most
people do. You know, it's interesting that he says there's, you know, you're 60% away from capacity, because I wonder what it is.
Yeah.
You know, because I know that I've gotten soft. You know, I know I could do more. And then I analyze it. It's like, okay, what else could I do that would be better at, you know, and I want my children to do the same thing, like push the envelope, like get out there, because everybody's born the same way, but then we take steps differently. We take steps at a different rate. You know, we talked about that competitive difference. Mm-hmm. You come from a small school or a big school, from a great program, from a not so great program, but you can still overcome.
And you mentioned leadership in there too, where you trust in leadership. And I put this poll up there on my Instagram the other day to see how people would respond if, because you've been in so many different locker rooms and in the military and stuff like that, have some good leaders, some bad leaders. Do you think leaders are made or leaders are born? And I didn't know I was going to ask you that, so no prep. Take a second to think.
No, you're fine. No, because you know, it gets back to that. It's the same conversation of nature over nurture, right? From day one of the first things I remember in a psychology class was nature and nurture, and this big debate, right? And it gets back to that: are you born this way? Do you have choice, or don't you? You know, and I think there's a bigger question there that we can't, you know, touch on without upsetting people. But the reality of all is, we all have free choice, you know, good, bad, or indifference. And I think about that coach from Grand Valley that got fired because he said that, you know, he talked to Hitler as a leader. You know, was Hitler born that way, or did he choose to become that way? We all know what he did was wrong, you know, and the way he reached people and motivated people is unparalleled at times in this world. you know, and you think about the idea of I don't think anybody's going to say they're going to be evil. I don't think anybody's going to go and say they're going to be the greatest leader, make a most positive impact on people in their life. They just, it happens because they realize that they, at some point, realize they can make a difference, you know. And it all starts with one choice, and then becomes 2 choices and 3 choices. And you talk about the difference in locker rooms. You know, I've seen people that shy away from leadership like no other. Like they just run from it. And I've seen other people that have no rights whatsoever, but absolutely make the greatest impact on the locker room. And when I say right, I mean, they're not going to make a play in the game. You know, if the guy falls out of downs, they might pick him up. That's about all that they're going to do in the impact of the game. But they are such an important component within the locker room. And they don't even know how important they are. You know, and I watch these, you know, I follow a lot of the free agent stuff now. You know, it's that time of the year. And I look at why you save guys and why you keep guys and why you get rid of guys. And then I think about the guys that get cut, and I know, and I talk to their coaches, and they're like, it wasn't the best decision of both of us, you know, which is code for saying he was not a good locker room guy. You know, he needed a better environment for him, and we needed a better environment without him. You know, that element of it all.
Yeah, looking back on some of the locker rooms that I'd been in, you can pick out the guys that were cancerous, and it was just ate away at the team. There was no direction. There was no, and it wasn't top level. It was guys in the locker. It was players that were cancerous, and it wasn't. They weren't setting that example that you were talking about earlier of a guy. There was no, when I first got to Northwood, there was no one setting an example of putting in extra reps in the weight room. It was there was no running sprints after practice when we weren't told to, and I think that was a big hindrance to us. We kind of had the attitude, and I love these guys, these older guys too. They're some of my best friends still today, but we all kind of had the attitude of we're just going to show up and we're going to be these gritty guys that just show up and work hard in the games, and that's going to be enough. And it wasn't. Oh. And so I don't know. It was the culture and the attitude. Is that kind of the difference that you see in locker rooms that succeed and locker rooms that don't, or even a business that succeeds or doesn't? The leadership, whether it's all the way up to the coach or just the players, what's the biggest difference of the ones that succeed and don't?
I think that as you look at it, because as you look at those organizations, and you can take it across my experience in life, whether it's Marine Corps, business, athletics, it's the ability, like you say the metaphor that you're only as strong as your weakest link, but how many people really value themselves as that link? Like, I want to be the weakest link. I've said that from day one. Once I went through the process of adding value to a football program and add value to a small unit leadership in a company in the Marine Corps, once I realized that, I want to be the weakest link, and it bothers me when I'm not. Okay? So I want to surround myself with people who are better than me. And so when I see that weakest link, in the best organizations, that weakest link is as important as its strongest link. And that weakest link is usually outworking that strongest link because they want to add value and they see the importance of bettering themselves. You know, when you get in a locker room and a guy who isn't going to get in the field suddenly starts putting everything into every play, and the other guys are like, man, slow down.
It's the Rudy that scene in Rudy where they're telling him to take it easy.
Yeah. And that right then and there, you know you're going to underachieve as a team. It's going to happen. But what can happen and does happen is people will have a conversation there, and there'll be an exchange, and the weak link will look at the strong link and go, I shouldn't change, you should. And I've been part of that conversation firsthand, and it didn't go like that. It was a little more like, beep, 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 beep. You know, where you're saying stuff to someone to make them understand that I simply say, I still looked at my buddy who's one of my best friends now, and ironically, he's now a Power 5 coordinator, and he tells the story of that weak link, strong link conversation. And he looked at me and he goes, and that guy said to me, he goes, you're where I want to be. And I won't get there if I only do what you're doing. But you can get to greater places. Like, and this is a byproduct that we kind of grew from, is you can get to places that you didn't even know you could if you do what I did. And so he achieved greater because it wasn't a fight. It didn't end up being a fight. It was like, you make a good point. Like, you want my job. I go, absolutely, I want your job. I want your scholarship too, because I didn't have one of those. I'm putting myself through school. I'm not going to get a scholarship if I just do what you're doing. I got to do beyond you. So when you get it was a 200-meter test then. When you get that and you can run it in 26 seconds, because that's your time to beat, hence the Jake Vincent, right? Conversation earlier when the guy's going out there at 12 when he had 16 seconds. And I'm coming through at 25, 24, and he's like, slow down, man, we got 2 seconds. No, I'm going to go faster. I'm going to try and run 23. That's the root of it all, right? I'm going to do better. And so we just kept replicating that over and over and over again. And what I found was my body was changing. And then what was even better was my relationship with my peers was changing. When I started winning the sprints at number 10, 11, 12 sprint, I couldn't do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 because all the fresh guys were faster than me.
Yeah.
But if I ran hard then and I continued to run hard, eventually I get them. And I started passing them. And I went from the slowest guy on the team to one of the fastest guys on the team. And so it taught me so much about speed development, strength development, leadership, character, all these things that you can improve and surpass those that you thought were superior to you if you just stick to it and realize. And then don't be a jerk, right?
Yeah.
You could say it and then, have a relationship with them. So we would have a conversation. We continued that conversation afterwards at breakfast. We got done with the running runs and we went and sat down and be like, hey guys, I hope I wasn't too harsh when I responded. I was kind of dying, like, no, Tom, you're killing us. I'm like, well, you're killing me because you can run this without even working hard. I have to push, and then like, oh, I respect that. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to continue. I'm going to try and beat you. Okay. Yeah. Hope you know that.
Yeah. And in the locker rooms that I walked into, it was, that conversation would never have happened.
No.
Me walking up to a senior and having that conversation would not happen. You probably would have gave me a swirly and dumped my lunch in the trash. It's probably what would have happened. And that was a problem.
And I had a conversation with a guy that I knew pretty well, and he said, he goes, I'm a 3-year starter. And I looked at him and go, what does that matter? The only thing that matters is your next start and how you're doing to prepare for it. Well, I'm this, and this. I'm like, that doesn't matter at all. I wish you could see that. Because all it means is if you're a 3-year starter on a bad team, then you're not very good. Mm-hmm. I'd rather be a bench player on a great team, getting better every day and getting closer. Now, I had the privilege to talk to the starting center of the Clemson first national championship team. I met him at a clinic and started talking, and he goes, I played for Clemson. I go, what years were you there? And he's like, he's like 20 to 15. I go, so you were in the national championship? Yep. And go, what position did you play? He goes, center. Hey, you touched the ball every single time, didn't you? He's like, yeah. And we started laughing. I go, you're the most important guy in the field. And he starts laughing. I go, why did you choose that? Because you were recruited pretty heavily. And he goes, I was. He goes, because of the people. Because that was before Dabo.
Yeah, it was before that they had won. Yeah.
Yeah, he was on the. He believed in people before there were championships. He didn't believe in the championships and then the people. And I think once you got belief in people, and you can add value to people's lives, and you can struggle with them and go through it all, you're gonna be stronger for it.
Yeah.
And he was an example of that.
Wow. So you take all this stuff that you've learned, and just data mined, like you said, over the years, and put that into what your company is now. Your high and tight ball. I guess we'll get to that. We've been rambling on this stuff, but we'll finally get to the company. How did you think of the idea to come up with this? Was it just the pain that you saw on teams that you've been around to fumbles is just and there was no training out there to
No.
To really remedy the situation?
You actually you actually saw it. You experienced it. We were at your place. We were going in, took the opening kick, and we were driving on the field.
Homecoming game, it was raining.
and we were punching it in, and we fumbled on the 2-yard line.
Yeah.
And then like 2 plays later, you went the yard, and it was all downhill from there. We came back, and
That was a close game. Yeah, I remember.
was.
Yeah.
But that first drive when we fumbled and didn't punch it in, and it was
tone setter.
52 off. It was a belly option. It was a handoff. It was give, no big deal, and the ball got punched out. That happened in 6 other games that year.
Really? On the opening drive, you're saying?
Not in the opening drive,
okay.
just in the fact that we fumbled the ball.
Yeah.
So that year, when we should have beaten you guys, we went 1-8. And this is things that you guys wouldn't know, but you just see the score. We lost 7 games to fumbles.
Oh my God.
Like that one. And we battled, like you said, we came back. We almost beat you in the second half. If we recovered that onside kick, I believe there was involved. We could go down and score and win it. But it was unbelievable because that was my 3rd year there. I went to high school. I was full-time in college and operations and recruiting coordinator and all that. And I was traveling the country and loving life. And my last recruiting class, I met my wife and I got married. And so I was doing that college and coaching, and I'm like, in my family, which is so much more difficult than people understand. And so I went to high school. I took over that Shepherd program. They had won 3 games in 2 years, and that, not because of the coaches weren't great, because they had a Hall of Fame coach on staff, and they had 2 other guys who are great coaches. I mean, it was phenomenal coaching. The climate of that league that just formed, all 8 teams had been playoff teams the year before. I mean, it was great competition, and so they had to close that gap. And so my first year there, we go 5-4. I'm like, this is right. And the second year, we go 5-4. I'm like thinking, this is 3rd year. I got everybody back. My best kid is Shelby, the one you know. Mm-hmm. He's a sophomore. Actually, he's a junior then. And so he's all set, right? He's the best athlete in school. We're going to do this. And we go 1-8. And like, you're kidding me. Like, this happened? But it was all because of fumbles. And so I was crying with these kids after games. And once again, I alluded to the fact that there's 2 types of people: problem staters and problem solvers. And I'm not going to spend time in problem stating. I'm going to spend it on problem solving. So I literally said to them, I'm going to find a solution to this. And that led me down a great journey of meeting a lot of people who are a lot smarter than I was, who I would ask questions and they'd give me a perspective, and then I'd have to mull it over and try to go forward. And so I came to the conclusion that every time I looked at video, I couldn't tell if the ball was tight to the body or not. It appeared to be. Mm-hmm. Even the ones that we fumbled against you, it looked like he had it up against his breastplate like he had no other time, and it got punched out, And so it's like, how do you truly know that it's tight? Because people say what they want about, I can, if my wrist is above the elbow and, if I'm chinning the ball, or if, and if I need to finish with 2 hands. But if you don't know how much pressure's on it, then it's only a matter of time before the pressure exerted on you from the outside is greater than the pressure you have on yourself.
It's coming full circle now.
Right? It is. I mean, that's how change happens, good or bad. Is force is placed on the outside from an exterior force, and it's greater than what you have on it, and boom, it's gone. And so I was like, okay, so how do I know that? I need some kind of recognition. And I started with like lights on it, and then the whole idea of like audible, I can know that even when I'm looking at something else, because we're so much about what we see. Mm-hmm. Right? You talk about that, how you read people, like body language.
Yeah.
I'm a 90-10. Like 90% of what I see is what I hear. The 10% is what you say. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I started asking guys that are experts in conditioning and habits, and they're like, well, it takes this much, and you need to be able to, if you're going to create a habit, you need to be able to read things, and you need to know what's happening. And then operant conditioning in psychology, it's like you want feedback, you want to be positively reinforced. And so I was like, okay, so it has to be a beep, so I know something's different. So now my practices are different. Like the ball's beeping, the guys know it, they're thinking about it, they're hearing it. So they do all they need to do and are getting different results, right? They're thinking, their mind isn't out there, their mind's in here. Mm-hmm. I still tell a story about when I first introduced you to the ball as a player, and we were doing the inside run, and you were finished after the linebacker, and you clamped down. And I was like, why'd you do that? There was nobody else around. You're like, why'd you beat it? Why? He goes, I didn't have the ball set right, coach. And I was like, what? And you said to me, you could feel when you're on the seams or if you're on the panels and the ball wasn't sitting right in your pocket. And I was like, oh, so it is true, right? Quarterbacks don't look for the laces, they feel it. Running backs can feel the ball position if they train it enough. And you were the first person that realized that. And I always tell everybody, I tell the coaches, I go, you know that guy that does everything you tell him to do and a little bit beyond? I go, that's my guy David that did that, right? He took it, everything I said, he took it to the next level. And so he was very aware that I could just, because he knew that if you fumbled the ball, you weren't going back in the game.
No, absolutely not.
You had zero margin for error. The problem exists in our world with the greatest athletes is they have a bigger margin for error than us. You know, they can afford one or two fumbles. And so coaches get conditioned to saying, okay, there's going to be fumbles. That coach, I talked to this just yesterday about the Power 5 coach about, you know, his guy only had one fumble and his guy only had two fumbles. He's like, that's going to happen. And I was just cringing. I was cringing. I'm like nails on a chalkboard, like, you've given in, you know. And he's a great coach and he's a great detail guy, but he's also got conditioned that there's a margin for error and it's acceptable. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, and in my mindset, because of all the experience we had, what helps me get away from being like everybody else in that regard is I'll take that mindset that he has and apply it to something greater, something stupid. Like, okay, so one time that I cheated my wife is okay.
Yeah.
I just can't do it 2 or 3 times
right.
or 10 times. And people are like, that's dumb. I go, it may be dumb to you, but it allows me to focus and say, is this important? You know, should I apply this situation to, like, it's okay, let it go? Or should I say, nope, this is pretty important, you know? And I don't know how many teams this year lost the game because of a fumble, but if they could change that and come back, would they? You know? And as I tell them, one fumble's too many. You know, and people look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, all you got to do is experience that one fumble. That brings you to the lowest spot in your life, loses you a national championship, loses you the last game of your career. You know, better yet, I got one NFL guy who lost his paycheck because of it. He had one too many fumbles and then didn't get his second contract. He literally lost out on millions of dollars. You know.
So, I mean, yeah, the pain is so high that, and you got the only ball that's the solution.
Hey, I love it.
let me grab it so
yep.
So people can see this thing.
Yep.
I don't know if I remember how to do this. This is the first time I picked up a football.
There you go. Yep. You got the X. Look it up.
Oh, yeah, there we go. That's the ball.
Yep.
High and tight.
Not just words.
What do you always say? Make it sing to you?
That's the guys who said, yep, make that ball sing was what the Cowboys said when they came out. And
yeah, because Zeke is a big Zeke uses it, right? Zeke Elliott?
He was using it. I don't know anymore because his coach is gone. They got change.
Oh, okay.
With every change, you know. So when you look at all the people that have invested in the team, you know, I always say that they have invested. I don't know if they're currently doing it, you know, because I don't want to ever say that they are or they aren't, because I don't know, because guys lose jobs and guys get different jobs. And so, which is great for me because now I get to have a conversation with somebody else.
Yeah,
you know?
and you go all around the country, going to all these places to meet with coaches and going to trade shows and all that stuff, which I guess goes back to all of everything you've learned throughout life. You got to hustle to. You said that you have to, if you want to get to where someone else is, you can't just do what they're doing. You got to do a little bit extra. So you're going. You have the car with all the logos on it and driving around, flying around, but then you also have social media going too to get the word out. And so how did it start? Did you start just going knocking on doors, basically calling coaches that you knew, and then it evolved into the social media kind of stuff too?
Well, it started, kind of organically, where when you solve somebody's problems and you give them a tool that's part of a great solution, they'll seek you out. So an NFL team reached out to me and said, hey, we got a guy that when they found that I had invented it, and I brought it to market, I went to the coaches, AFCA, the American Football Coaches Association, went to there and presented it as a vendor. And then what I realized quickly was it's not the right development place for that. It needs to be in an instructional standpoint. I need to be a coach rather than a salesman, because coaches need to see the value that it brings. But the right guy heard about it, and consequently, CBS Sports brought me in to do this little demo and teach them. And it was really going phenomenally. When they did all the the video of it, and they released it in social media. It had like 1.8 million views in the 2 days. And then we got shut down by the owner. And I don't know the logistics of why, but what it did was just made me realize that, hey, when one roadblock goes up, you just got to find a way around it, and you just continue to have those conversations. So what could have been an easy integration into the sport of football became a little more difficult, And then Michelle Tavoya picked up on it because of Zeke. And the Zeke conversation started because I went to the combine as a coach, and I was in there, and I just went out there and I did my due diligence. I did my research. I was looking for the running back coaches, and I had never been to the combine before. And so I went to Indianapolis, and I get in there, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? And there was one guy, when I did my research on the 32 teams, on 32 coaches, there was this guy named Ollie Wilson. He'd been in the NFL for 28 years. He'd been with a bunch of different things. And his resume just read like someone who was seasoned, someone who was respected, because he always had an NFL job, and always go from one to another and add value. Had great resume of who he coached. And so I walk into there, and I'm in the end zone. And if you watch an NFL Network and all those, you see where they have their media setups. And I'm standing there. And I go, all right, God, what do you want me to do here? And I'm just like, my moment of like solitude prayer, like, okay, this is daunting. This is pretty overwhelming, and everybody's walking around like Jerry Jones just walked by me, all there's head coaches, owners, everybody. And I look down, and the guy walks up, stands next to me, and his briefcase is standing there, his shoulder case. And I looked at it, and it's got a Chargers logo, and it's got OW monogrammed on it. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he gave us really nice. He said, hi. I go, hey, Coach, how you doing? He goes, doing well. I go, you wouldn't happen to be Coach Wilson, would you? He goes, I am. I go, Coach Wilson? I'm Tom Creguer. I'm a Division II football coach that just here for the first time, and I invented a product called High and Tight. Well, High and Tight, that's what I say. That's what I preach. And then he goes, it's so much important to me. He goes, I look back, and I break down every year how the ball's not high and tight, and he just starts going down. He goes, I've done my 28 seasons, and he just started going on all this research that he'd done and all the things that he'd learned, and all the things he taught. And I literally didn't say anything about high and tight for like 20 minutes. And then he goes, wow, I'd love to see what you have sometime. And I was like, well, here, it's in my backpack. And I pulled it out, and I go, I teach split finger. He goes, yep, me too, absolutely. And he closed the elbow, yep, and flatten the wrist, yep. And it beeps. And his eyes got so big. He's like, you mean you tell me I'll know if he's got it tight to his body? Oh my gosh, this is a game changer. Like, he's just going, I've been looking for this all my entire career. I look at that guy, and I keep telling him tight. And he's like, no. And he's like, he just starts going on. And we just started having a conversation. Well, shucks, Ollie Wilson walks down and talks to Gary Brown, who used to play for the Lions, who's going to be Zeke Elliott's coach, because Zeke's down on the field running right now. And so Gary Brown comes up and he goes, hey, I'm Gary Brown. Are you Coach Creguer? I'm like, I am. He goes, you got the high and tight ball? I go, I do. And so he comes to me, and I go, you teach high and tight, Coach? He goes, Coach, come on. Of course I do. And I go, Gary Brown, did you play for the Lions? He goes, I did. I go, unfortunately, I'm a Lions fan. Right. And so he starts asking me questions about it. I start talking about it. He looks at me, he goes, can I give you my card? And I'm like, okay, you give me your card, right? Coach, of course you can. He goes, I'd love to learn more about this and get something for our guys. So then I'm like, well, that was pretty good. So then I cut more guys, have a couple more conversations. And then the end of the combine's kind of wrapping up, and Marshall Faulk was doing commentating on the field. And you can get right down to the field. You can't step on the grass, but you can get right down the field as a coach there. And I walk down, and the day's almost over. All the athletes are gone. Ezekiel Elliott put on a performance like no other. And I walk up the edge, and I'm like, and Marshall Faulk's working, right? He's on his earphone, and I'm like, oh, geez, what am I doing here? I'm dumb, right? I shouldn't be doing this. And I go, excuse me, Mr. Faulk? And he got his earpiece, and he's like looking at me. I go, Mr. Faulk? And he pulls his earpiece out. He goes, yeah. I go, I know you're working. I apologize. I go, got a question for you. And he kind of walked over. I go, you've said high and tight all your life, right? He goes, oh, yeah, absolutely. I go, have you seen the ball high and tight where it beeps when you hold it tight to your body? Beep. And he looked at me. He's like, no. And he looked at me like I had three eyes. Uh-huh. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I know you're busy. I appreciate your time. I thank you for the moment. He goes, nods at me and walks away. So then I walk over and I'm like, oh, geez, I just bombed. Like, I had an NFL Hall of Famer right there, and I couldn't get a good conversation going. I was like, that's horrible. Well, as I'm walking over, Ezekiel Elliott's walking off. And I go, hey, Zeke, nice run out there. He goes, hey, thanks. I go, you do a pretty good job with high and tight, don't you? He goes, yeah. I go, you ever seen this? Beep. And he's like, was that the ball? I go, yeah. He goes, give me that. He takes it and he goes, beep, beep. Oh, this is amazing. Oh, my gosh. I never felt this is a lot better than getting hit by a bat.
Yeah.
And then Urban Meyer's standing right there. And Urban Meyer's like, what's that? I go, high and tight, sir. He goes, I'm being a Michigan guy. I grew up Michigan. Yeah. I'm like,
it's tough. You want to give it to him.
Oh my gosh. Ohio State's the first guy that talks to me, and he's like, get a hold of Coach Hinson, will you? I go, actually talked to him at the convention already, sir. You did? I go, yes, I did. He goes, oh, excellent. Thanks. And he just kind of just dismissed me. But Zeke was like, thanks. And he was really genuine. Like, this is really cool. Thank you. And so, how it comes full circle is they get drafted Zeke gets drafted by the Cowboys, and Gary Brown's the one that gave me his card saying, hey, I want to get some of these. So they start training with him, and they absolutely love him. But like with any other professional, their attention to detail isn't what it should be. And my conversation with Coach Brown were like, this is the greatest thing ever. He goes, the problem lies is we don't spend enough time on it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, repetition becomes habit, and you watch that guy. He was a great hurdler in high school, and you see every time he hurdles somebody, that ball comes away, and that's how they got those fumbles. And he got a couple fumbles, expending the ball away. It's just repetition becomes habit. I don't fault Zeke Elliott or any other athlete. I just fault the fact that we need to give them more reps as coaches, and we encourage them to eliminate them.
Yeah, it's conditioning at that point.
It totally is. It's a muscle memory.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. You never told me that story before.
Yeah, I don't share that too much because on the way home I felt so disappointed, right?
Man, Marshall Falk though, that's sweet.
Oh, and then a week later, it was Wednesday. No, yeah, the combine gets over on Monday, so it was Wednesday. I get an email from my info at High and Tight, and it says, "Hey, I'm legal counsel that represents Marshall Falk. Do you have time for a phone call?"
You're like, this could go one of two ways. Like,
I'm going to be in jail, and so I get on the conversation. I get on the phone with his lawyer, and his agent is Rocky Arsenal, who's the guy that presented his bust when he went to the Hall of Fame. Great guy. He's from Louisiana. So his lawyer is Brian Henula, who wrote Zeke's contract. The guy that wrote the biggest contract in the history of the NFL now is Brian Henula. Awesome human being. San Diego kid, played college football. Walk-on kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, hey, we'd love to have you come out here. We're going to do a show on NFL Network, Game Changers with all the running backs, top running backs. Can you get out here? And I'm like, yeah, I can get out there. So I get out there, and I get to the laboratory, this Exos training facility, and there's Brian meets me there, and then there's four of the top running backs. Swervin Irvin from San Jose State, and then the big running back from USC that's with the Seahawks, and then a couple other guys. And Zeke is sick, doesn't even show up, and so I'm standing there, and Steve Mariucci walks in, who's doing the presentation for the thing, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I go, "Hey, coach," and go, "How's the Michigander doing?" He goes, "You from Michigan?" I go, "Yes, sir." I go, I'm actually friends with some guys from Iron Mountain in Nishpeming, and that's where he's from. So he's like, no way. I go, Steve, Randy Alry. He's like, that was Saginaw Valley. Mm-hmm. They grew up in the same hometown.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he's like, Randy Alry. Well, he starts talking, and he's like, where are you from? I go, Mount Pleasant. He goes, oh, Central Michigan University. I'm like, yep, fire up chips, and he was really nice. He goes, what you doing here? And he's like, I'm like, I'm here for the High and Tight, and we're supposed to be doing some stuff with you guys and with Zeke. And he's like, I don't even think Zeke's going to show up. But he was sick, so he didn't show up. But Zeke was there, and then so I just kind of stood around and watched that day, which I thought I was going to be on the NFL Network, and I thought this was going to be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Didn't work out the way I wanted. And then the wide receivers came in the afternoon, and Michael Irvin walked in. And now Michael Irvin has zero personal space, okay? Like, him and I spent half hour, an hour. And I mean, he had his hands all over me, like he's hugging me, like we're best buds. I mean, it was crazy. I was like, wow. And I just asked him a couple questions about like, you know, like who was the best DBs you ever played with, you know, and he talked about one of the guys, Aeneas Williams, one of my favorite guys, you know, and I said, well, with your size, you know, nobody can D you up. And he's like, so he's telling me stories, and I'm just like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I know everybody knows who Michael Irvin is, right? This is one of your childhood guys. And so we went out and I watched the wide receivers go through their stuff, and I talked to Michael Thomas, who was there, and a couple other guys, and they're good guys, like good kids. And so I asked him some unique questions that I couldn't have asked any other time. And then Michael Irvin comes over and he's like, hey, let's go Facebook. And I'm like, what? So we're on, you know, I go on Facebook, and my wife's like, what are you doing? Are you getting any work done?
Yeah. Yes, actually I am.
I'm like, well, I'm being a kid right now because this is Michael Irvin, you know, and so I left the facility after 12 hours with nothing of value other than great experiences. I talked to some people down there, and so I'm driving, and it comes back to people. My son, I have an adopted son who's in the Marine Corps, so I was staying with him. And so I called him, and I'm like, man, James, it did not go well today. I didn't get any video with high and tight, NFL Network, nothing. And then I get a phone call from Zeke's agent. He's like, hey, Tom, where are you? And I'm like, well, I'm just driving down to San Diego to see my son, or see some friends. And he's like, can you swing by the hotel? I'm like, just give me your address, I'll swing by. So they bring me over to this hotel, and this hotel is on the ocean. Like, it's a high-story thing. And so I'm sitting on the ocean around the pool, overlooking the pool, and I'm talking to Rocky Arsenault and Brian Hanula, guys that have arguably two of the most powerful guys in the NFL, you know, back scene that people don't know about. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we really like what you're doing. We really like who you are and what you're doing. And, you know, we need to create a relationship and keep this open. And, you know, Zeke might not be ready yet, you know, for something, and, you know, but who knows? And I was like, all right. I'm always into working out, you know, with good people. And, you know, that's the biggest thing, because we just left it as, hey, we like you. We spent some time that day, and I'm like, we think you're a good human being, and you're honest and direct, and, you know, so let's keep going. I'm like, all right. And that was 4 years ago. You know, it hasn't come to fruition yet, but who knows? Because we have had some conversations about different guys that they're bringing under the stable, and trying to create some kind of business relationship. So it's all the process.
Yeah, that kind of shows the how long it actually takes to get something really, really going. But that's also the just the having that resilience of having, man, you think you're so close, and then it gets shut down, and then not giving up, and being able to go make that another call tomorrow, and keeping the hope and faith alive that something could still click, rather than just throwing in the towel and giving up. It's
you know when you talk about that sports psychology, when they say visualize success, mm-hmm. I have always been the absolute opposite. I've always been the worst case scenario guy. I can still remember playing, and before a game, all I could think about, okay, well, he's going to beat me this way, or he's going to beat me that way, or, you know, he's going to take me deep here, or I'm going to miss a tackle there. I just resonated every bad thing in my head that could go wrong, because when it happened, I already had it handled. I already thought about the moment after. You know, I think that's the part where we miss in the development of mental toughness and mental strength, is that we don't talk about the moment after, which is the defining moment, right? So like, what do you do next? And I use it for my own personal experience. I say, what's the worst thing that can happen here? What's the absolute worst thing if I'm in a game and I drop the ball, or I get in a game and I get beat, or, you know, what's the worst thing that happen? Okay, they score. Okay. You know, I'll never forget we talked about that. You don't remember many plays you know, from your playing days, but we're playing our arch rival.
That might be CTE kicking in.
No, I hope not. But we're playing our arch rival and Western Michigan, and I get burned not once, twice in the first quarter, and we're down by 21. And I'm like, we're sitting on the sidelines, and we're, as a team, we talk about leadership. We had 26 seniors on our team. I think it's got to be a record. And we all look at each other, and the coach is like, hey, this is what I go. We're like, respectfully, we're like, Coach, we got it. And then he's like, all right. And he's a great man. One of the guys I respected the day till day. And we all looked at each other, and we were like, no more mistakes. Okay? I will communicate better, because we had switched from cover 2 to cover 3, and I dropped down the box and I didn't communicate it well enough to the other guy. And like, we just got to stop making mistakes. We got to talk better. And sure enough, we get down a goal line stance. We stop in 4th down. We win the game. It's one of the greatest games in the history of the rivalry. I never lost to Western Michigan as a player. But it wasn't because they weren't better than us, because they were. Mm-hmm. They were loaded. But it all came back to that. If you just stay calm in the face of adversity and just look around and make a decision, you can move forward. And that's what we did. As a unit, as a group, we just calmed down, didn't let our emotions take care of us, and just said, you know what? That's where emotions go up and down, right? I don't like the guy screaming and hollering and all that stuff. Just play with passion. Passion is consistent, and passion is fueled by love. If you can love those around you, you can play with passion, you got a chance in everything, right? And so now I look at it and go, what's the worst case scenario in business? If I quit and don't go on and start still preaching the message and trying to help people with high and tight, what have I shown my children? Mm-hmm. What have I taught my kids? That's the worst thing right now. Because money, they don't know how much money I've spent. They don't know how much time I've spent, because I've integrated and folded them in. They think Dad does camps and clinics, and they think he does coaching, but they don't understand. I go, but they will see me quit, right? If they do that, they'll see that, and that'll resonate with them. That's okay. That when you face adversity, just give up. And that is not a message I'm going to give my child, right? So now it's like, what's worst case scenario if I stop trying to do hard and tight because it's difficult? Because I can't reach everybody. There's 16,000 high schools out there I haven't reached yet. Mm-hmm. There's 44,000 youth programs I haven't reached yet. There's 16 NFL teams I haven't reached yet. What's the message? And when I die, at least they can say that, the guy never gave up.
Man.
And I guess it's good to put on a tombstone.
That might be a good place to end here too. We could go on for 24 hours talking about this stuff, but man.
Did you cover everything you wanted to cover?
I did. Did you?
I don't even know.
Man, and that
I value
like
time.
I said, that was I was lost in there. I don't even know how much time went by. But man, yeah, we'll wrap it up, I guess. How can people find your social media? I know that you have a couple different outlets on social media.
And when people tell you about they're not social media plugged in, I say, well, then you're not really breathing in the 21st century, right? Because you have to be. That's the way people talk nowadays. So just think about this, that one fumble's too many. So it's high and tight one, HIGHANDTIGHT, one, the number one, at anything. Yeah. So you got Instagram, you got Twitter, you got Facebook, and then of course you got highandtight.com as our internet source. And I will say this about the Instagram and that social media element. If you're not an expert, which I'm not, surround yourself with people who are. I partnered with a lady called Track Baby.
That's her handle.
She's Track Baby 001.
I'll put it in the show notes and stuff so people can just click it.
Yeah, she's. You talk about people having an audience and people having a level of influence, and you got to plug in. That's not my calling. My calling isn't to lead and influence people on a social media platform. My calling is to add value and help people in coaching and teaching tools, and I love that. And so I needed someone who has passion for sports, has passion for football. She has gone down in history right now as the first woman to sign a multi-million-dollar contract for professional women's football, which was postponed. Their what do they call it this year? Their pilot season is postponed because of the underlying currents of society right now, but it will come back. They're supposed to start their inaugural seasons next 2021. She's a tremendous worker, a great advocate for women in athletics and for the sport of football. You go out there and try to do the things she can do physically. Whoa, she's an animal. So, but yeah, I would encourage you to find someone who has the same passion as you do and the same vision for future, and then let them be the influencer while you do the work.
Yeah.
And always realize that work comes in different ways. And probably the biggest takeaway from a business standpoint I've learned in the last 5 years is just remember that, the price of success is commitment and sacrifice, but don't sacrifice the things that matter more than business. you know, and that's been my biggest thing, is making sure my children and my wife understand that if I succeed in business but fail on them, have I really succeeded?
Yeah.
You know, and so I resonate that with my children every day. And then the craziest thing I want to share this with you because I thought I was going to go. The craziest thing I've ever done in terms of gathering leads and making impacts is my family and I drove out to Denver to see a friend of ours who coaches the Broncos, and then we went to the Grand Canyon, and we saw the Grand Canyon as a family, which is incredible. Well, we stopped at Arizona to see family, and my kids flew home. And when my wife and kids flew home, and I stayed and met the University of Arizona running back coach, then I went to UTEP, which is, if you've ever been there, it's literally a stone's throw to Mexico. And I met the running backs coach there, and then I went to Texas Tech, introduced the guy, equipment manager, myself, and then went from there and just started up back into Michigan. And I went to like 15 different colleges and just knocked on doors and converted 4 or 5 of them. It took me a week. I slept in my car 3 nights, slept in coaches' houses 2 other nights. And the last night was in Iowa, and I was sleeping in my car. It was 30 degrees out. And I thought, is this the price of success?
Yeah.
and I realized I need to be smarter and not just work harder.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what got me going down social media, because reaching people now, I can reach those same people by not even leaving my town.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, which is the power of connection, right?
Yeah.
Which is really what we're doing when we're data mining, is connecting with people on social media, and when I meet someone new, I try to make them a friend. And you know, when you're genuine and you're straightforward, then you got a possibility.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so everyone go follow High and Tight, especially if you're a coach or something like that. Go follow Coach Creguer on High and Tight. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, anything like that, hit subscribe. Follow us, Empire Mentality, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Subscribe on YouTube. That's really all we got. That was fun. That was, like I said, we could talk for 24 hours about that. We might have to do another episode another time in the future, but
I'm sure there's something else we can talk about.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.